The Flintstones was a cartoon that I remember watching off and on as a kid. It would come on, and of course I'd be fascinated about the mechanics of exactly how does a car propelled by feet actually work. And then I'd also be asking, why don't they just walk everywhere if the car is actually based on them walking everywhere? It wasn't until I was in high school that I discovered there were video games based on the Flintstones franchise put out by Taito. I played the Flintstones, The Rescue of Dino and Hoppy, many times, and I actually really enjoyed the gameplay. The world was well realized by the graphics and contained a lot of platforming challenges unique to the franchise and not so unique. I never played the Flintstones: The Surprise at Dinosaur Peak until recently, a game which now holds the title as being one of the most expensive NES cartridges out there. And then I discovered there was a Game Boy game created in the same spirit as the two NES Flintstones titles, The Flintstones: King Rock, Treasure Island. The game takes the same basic gameplay from the NES titles while adding in a few new mechanics to learn, which I believe elevate the gameplay here, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. In this game, Fred Flintstone is working at the quarry one day when he uncovers a treasure map. Since his wedding anniversary is coming soon, he decides this treasure will be the perfect gift for his wife, Wilma, so he sets off to find the treasure of King Rock Island. Such a simple and really random premise for a game, but I digress. There are 7 stages to play through here, starting in Bedrock. There were 2 things I noticed right off the bat when playing. First, when I threw an axe at an enemy, they froze in place on the first hit, and then the second hit would take them out. The second thing I noticed was that Fred could not pull himself up onto ledges like he can in the NES games. And then I discovered I could jump on top of the frozen enemies, and that would allow me to reach higher places. This is actually a really nice change to the gameplay, and to the enemies in general. Many secrets throughout the game can only be obtained by luring enemies to a certain place, and then freezing them there so you can hop on their back and make it up to the secret. In some places, you need to master this technique of using enemies as platforms in order to progress. Where this is essential, there are skulls on the ground that continually respawn enemies you need to keep moving forward. The other nice change here is that axes are unlimited. You can throw as many as you want and never run out, unlike in the NES games where you're limited by how many coins you have as to how many axes you can throw. Granted, axes don't work on every enemy in this game. A few of them are immune to any weapons and must simply be avoided. There are always surprises when you play a game for the first time, and here, the best surprise came about halfway through stage 1. I came upon a little square with Dino's face on it. And when you pick up this square, it's like picking up Yoshi in Super Mario World, where you can suddenly ride on Dino's back. This gives you a super high jump, as well as the ability to throw axes straight across the screen instead of in an arch. One hit from an enemy will make Dino disappear, but if you manage to keep him throughout the levels, you'll also be able to discover so many secrets by jumping higher to hidden platforms. There are other items to collect throughout each level alongside Dino. You can also find little squares with the Great Gazoo, a little alien who often helps Fred and Barney on their adventures. Once you collect enough of these, you'll receive an extra life. There are also wheels to collect which add to your total score, and hearts that add health back to your life meter in the bottom left of the screen. There are 4 other platforming stages here: Desert Rock, a desert level complete with quicksand, skeleton fossils, and palm trees in the background. You also have the Dark Ship, which is on board a ship owned by Igor Stone, a somewhat obscure character from the Flintstones cartoon, who is a parody of Igor from the Frankenstein mythos. On the ship, you traverse over the waters, dodging flying fish, robots, and lightning bolts to make it to the other side. The sea bottom stage takes place on the ocean floor, where Fred can jump a little higher than normal under the water. Finally, the King Rock Castle stage takes place on King Rock Island inside a spooky castle belonging to King Rock, the final boss of the game. There are two other stages, which are both car stages, adding a nice break to the gameplay. Here, Fred drive-walks in his car in an auto-scrolling level that only allows you to slow down, speed up, and jump. These levels are filled with items to collect and chasms to cross. Getting stuck will cause you to lose a life and start the level over. There are some arbitrary checkpoints here and there that allow you to restart from later on in the level, which is a really nice quality of life mechanic so that these stages are not as frustrating as they might have become. There are 3 level end bosses here. A typical fire-breathing dinosaur in the first level ripped right out of the first NES game's first level, a giant sea turtle after beating the sea bottom stage, and of course King Rock, the floating skull that does not want Fred to take its treasure. There's one mid-level boss in the dark ship stage, a sea dinosaur who's fairly easy to defeat after only a few hits. King Rock is not too difficult of a final boss either, especially once you discover the pattern to beating him. However, the first dinosaur is nearly impossible to defeat unless you have Dino and can throw axes straight across at him. The fire breathes out of his mouth too quickly for Fred to really jump backwards, and getting hit by the fire often sends Fred forwards into a chasm, causing you to lose a life. One major downside in this game, though, is the music. It's really repetitive, and after a while, I found myself getting a little bit of a headache from the same notes repeating over and over and over, and hardly ever changing. There are a couple of different songs, which was a very welcome reprieve, right as one of them became too annoying to listen to any longer, but by the end, I really wanted that music to fall to the bottom of the sea and stay there. Overall, the game is pretty short, but it is fun. Especially if you like either of the NES Flintstones platformers, you will likely enjoy this game quite a bit. It felt like a spiritual successor to both of those games, while being an on-the-go and perfect length kind of game for a Game Boy car ride in the back seat. So, what do I like about this game? Actually, quite a bit. My favorite stage of the game was the desert rock level, as it was the most visually interesting and different from any other levels in the game, and any other levels in any Flintstone games I've played. The aesthetic of quicksand, palm trees, and fossils really felt like a lot of fun. The level also didn't have a final boss, and that made it just a stage to play through and enjoy, instead of worrying about starting over after losing to a final enemy. My favorite boss in this game, though, has to be the giant sea turtle. Twice in the sea bottom level, you ride the turtle shell, first down a chasm where you have to dodge the platforms as the section auto-scrolls through, and then again as it moves up until you face off against the turtle's head. This was also one of the more challenging bosses in the game, but in a fair sort of way. You really have to discover the rhythm of the turtle's attacks before whacking it in the head with the axes. And finally, the best surprise of this game was being able to ride on Dino's back throughout each level. This was definitely one of the best moments for me, as I gasped out loud when I first saw it. And riding Dino is a lot of fun, giving you that ability to throw the axes straight ahead and jump higher than you could normally. So let's break it down. Should you pass or play this one? My rating system is simple. It's either a pass, play, or play it again. Pass just means you can definitely skip this one, play means you should play it at least once in your life, and play it again means it's worth keeping and revisiting. The Flintstones King Rock Treasure Island falls into that perfect for the Game Boy category. Short enough to be played in one sitting, great graphics for the system actually, only enhanced by my personal favorite way to play Game Boy games on the Super Game Boy adapter for the Super Nintendo. It has easy to learn game mechanics and lots of secrets to discover throughout each stage. So for me, this one I might play again someday, but I'm not rushing back to it anytime soon. So the Flintstones King Rock Treasure Island receives my official Play It Again Pastor rating of play. There are a lot of other fun Flintstones video games out there, and I'll be visiting those in the near future. For now, check out some of the other videos on my channel, and if there's a retro game you think I should play again, drop the name in the comments below.